Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Dana Scranton, and welcome to 8 Minute Wisdom. Now, today is the first in a series of what I'm going to call your perpetual assets. As an entrepreneur, or a human for that matter, we have a whole cache of assets that we can draw upon to make our life fulfilled. And some of those are a little controversial. Some will call them resources, some will call them assets. So let me just differentiate what those two things are right up front. An asset is something that you own and you can utilize at your will and with your discretion. A resource is something you have access to. You can borrow it, you can use it. It may cost you something, it may cost you nothing, but it's a resource available upon your call. Okay. So we're just going to differentiate those two like that so that we have a little clarity with what we're talking about. Okay, so why is this important? Well, as an entrepreneur, one of the things that I learned is there's two kinds of assets. There's the assets that you have to buy, and there's the assets that you naturally own. The ones that you have to buy, those get really expensive. And as a matter of fact, in many cases, you don't own the whole asset. The bank owns part of it, or the mortgage company owns part of it. So there's a real differentiation here that I want you to pay attention to in terms of free, natural assets and, well, costly, unnatural assets. So let's start with time. Now, one of the things that many people say is, I don't have the time, or I wish I had the time. And this is one of those controversial assets. Time is an asset that you own. And I want to start by a quote out of a book. The book is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. This thing was published back in 1910. But the philosophies in this book have been the basis for a great many personal development fortunes. It's a book written in the the academic tongue, if you will, of the 1910s. So to some people, it sounds a little weird, but you have to keep in mind that what they were educated to speak like, think like, and write like in those days, and the cultural mores of the time were different. But here's what I want to read you, and we'll go into this. Now, what this has to do with is time in terms of what you do with your time to achieve that which you desire. So here is the quote out of the book. And your action, whatever it is, must most likely be in your present business or employment and must be upon the persons and things in your present environment. Do not give your creative impulse to what they call the original substance and then sit down and wait for results. Now, I could go into a great deal more in the book, but I want to break that down for you. Here's what that means. You have time at your command. Let's say that you are a part-time entrepreneur, that you have a desire to become financially free. At the moment, you're working for someone, you are an employee. So you somehow believe that your time belongs to them from the start to the end of your day. And then the time belongs to the highway during your commute to and from work or wherever you may live. I want to change the way you think about that. You own your time. You own the effectiveness of your time. Look at your time as an asset 24/7. Okay. That's the first ground rule. You own an asset called time. And in the human context here on earth, we break that time into 24 hours per day. Okay. You own the time in the essence of how you live your life. If you're working for someone, and let's say it's a 10-hour day with lunch and commutes, okay? What you do with your mind during that 10-hour period has an influence on that dream that you have in your heart to become a financially independent entrepreneur. And how is that? Well, first of all, you got to really focus on what you want. That entrepreneurial dream, that financial independence, and all the things that that means to you. Now, you may say, well, yeah, but you just said that, this other 10 hours I own that time, but I don't. Yes, you do. And here's why. When you go to your job, your vocation, whatever it is that you're doing that 10 hours a day, bring your vision of the life that you are desiring, whatever that may be, and all the things it means to you to that job with you, and execute every task during the day as if that task were part of that greater vision. Now, this takes practice. When you go in, you have to bring your energy and your enthusiasm to the task at hand. Now, this goes back to what I just read to you. You don't put your vision, your desires, your hopes up there into the ether to what he calls the original substance, which is the universe in this context, or any other deity you wish to assign to it. You don't just throw it out there and then go back to griping about your job. That's not how it works. Every day you execute every task, every action, every experience as if it were part of the greater vision and desire, because it's who you are that's going to get you where you want to go. It's who you are and what you do with who you are. So you are that dream. You are that objective, that vision, that desire. That's who you are. The energy that propels you to dream, to think, to long for the results of that desire is who you are. And you bring that to your job with the energy and enthusiasm as if what you were doing at that moment, no matter how different it may be from what you want to do, is something that leads you to the gateway to the desire. It leads you out there onto the frontier of possibilities and beyond. Now, this is a mind game because entrepreneurship is a mind game. The other thing this does for you is it targets how you spend your time. Time is also a mental game. It's one thing to sit down and say, okay, I have to screw all these nuts on the end of the bolts, and I'm being judged by how many bolts I can screw with a nut and drop it in a bucket. You may think, well, that's a menial task, but what that is an opportunity to perfect how you think about what you're doing, how you equate that degree of excellence, even perfection, to what it means to become the person you will eventually become. How you execute that task, whatever it may be, is an indication of your ability to lead a life that takes you to where you want to go. So don't go to a job and be mediocre at it. Go to the job and be excellent, because that's what it's going to take to get you from where you are to where you want to go. Make no mistake, life is not a lottery. Entrepreneurship is not a lottery. It's a journey. It's a journey you embark upon on your own free will, and you have assets, one of which is time. If you own your time, it means you value it. You value what you do in every moment. You value it. If someone else doesn't value what you're doing, or you believe someone else doesn't value what you're doing, those are two different things. If someone doesn't value what you're doing, but you realize you have to value everything you do to reward and recognize yourself for who you are, that's a powerful investment of your asset of time. If someone else doesn't value what you do, that's their problem. And you have choices. You value what you do because it's who you are. If somebody you're working for doesn't value what you do, get another job, move on, find another option. Do not succumb to the desperation of putting yourself in a position where your time is not valued by someone else who has control over you. Now, that's a whole nother asset class we'll talk about. But I hope you get the point of what I'm saying here today. I want to try to keep this as close to 8 minutes as we can. And we're going to go into other assets, but time is the first one I want you to work on. It's an asset that you own. It's an asset you invest with your attitude, your energy, your focus, your enthusiasm. Every moment of every day, every experience and task is an opportunity to reinforce and affirm who you are as a person that is worthy, deserving, and capable of creating that desire, that dream, fulfilling it, becoming the entrepreneur and the person that you so desire. Well, that's today's 8-Minute Wisdom. I know that was kind of a load, but it is. Go check out The Science of Getting Rich. If you haven't already read it, acquire it and read it. Don't be judgmental about the language and the context that this individual writes in. It was the way it was in 1910, but the message is perpetual. It's a very interesting book, and you're going to have to read it more than once to get it. But let's talk about that later. All right. Well, once again, we'll see you out there on that frontier of possibilities and all the things that it means to you. And of course, in the next episode. Take care.